first thing the dude told me when they got off the bus, he stayed in 9th Ward, the area inside of New Orleans. He said that they blew the canal. That's the first thing he told me. He said it didn't break. He said they blew it. And he said they blew it so that the French quarters would not flood. This is what he told me, y'all. Now, y'all listen. You can listen to CNN, but I'm giving it to you from the people who just come from now. That's what he told me. Now, another thing he told me. He said they had 2 elementary schools in 9th Ward. Now, remember, I'm not saying in New Orleans. I'm just giving you one section in New Orleans. He said they had 2 elementary schools they told everybody to evacuate to. He said they filled the school up, 2 elementary schools up. And guess what happened? Everybody in the schools is dead. The water is up, the schools are up underwater. The schools are up underwater. So, what they asked me was how many people CNN saying is dead. I told them I don't know because CNN is not giving the reports on the dead. They said inside of the Superdome. They said his body's floating around inside of the Superdome. They said Superdome. They said it's a whole bunch of bodies. And they not talking, the way they telling me, they ain't talking about like no 500 or 600 or 2,000 or 3,000. They talking about bodies. They talking about bodies.
When I hear that you were on your porch and you saw that the levee was blown up and bombed, I can't let that pass. I don't know
let that pass. Come go home with me.
I don't know if that's theater or the truth.
Come go home with me.
Okay, now this is what I want to ask you. Let's start with you then.
Mm-hmm.
Is your home right next door to where the levee broke?
London Street Canal. I'm in the 7th Ward.
How far away was the breach from where?
17th Street Canal is a little further distance, but you have to understand New Orleans is called the Crescent City.
I don't need a long explanation. How many?
Mister, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm going to tell you, I'm 62, and I have to talk the way I talk.
How many feet was the levee from your porch?
I'm Phi Beta Kappa, too, but I have to talk the way I talk. I'm trying to answer your question.
How many feet? How many? Half a mile?
No, let me go a little further than that. There was a military person in my house, somebody who served their country well, who, when we started looking at what was this too loud, boom, boom, mister, I'll never forget it.
Let me ask you this, ma'am. How far?
He said, Mama D, that was a bomb.
Were you going to answer my question?
Yeah.
How far away is your porch?
From the London Street Canal, it's halfway to my post office box that I walk every day.
So the levee is just across the street from you?
I'll say, how far is St. Aug from me? Broad and St. Bernard, Broad and AP2 Road. It's about that,
Mama
baby.
D, can I understand it is that you didn't see it, but you heard it? Is that fair to say?
Anybody who saw it ain't living to tell about it.
So you didn't see it, but you heard it. Okay.
The water, within the minutes that the water came in my neighborhood, it looked like somebody put the Atlantic Ocean. It was 10 feet of water rolling. You could surf on it. I have the tree marked in front of my door over 6 feet. That's where it settled. I don't know what kind of answer you want, mister. That's why we have problems with y'all coming telling us what to do in knowledge. You don't even understand us when we talk.
Did you say there was an order that the levees be breached?
No, I said the order in which the levees were breached.
Chronological.
But the order.
Can you define that word for me, please, baby? What does breach mean? Bombed? I was on my front porch. I have witnesses that they bombed the walls of the levee. And the debris that's in front of my door will testify to that.
And yes, I did interview people who live in the lower 9th Ward. I have been over there, and I have footage I didn't bring with me, but I'd be certainly glad to see that you have it. It is undeveloped. I have interviewed people who live in the area. That area looks like a bomb has been dropped on it. And people say they heard an explosion that sounded like a bomb.
And let's go back to 1927. 1927 is not the only time that it's been recorded that the levee has been purposely breached. There has been occasions historically where the black residents have taken the levee and armed themselves to stop someone from coming and breaching the levee purposely, because they know that this is a history in the region when you want to save the rich community to let the waters flow into the poor community. I'm talking history now. But we do have to look at what happened and transpired in this event, and we need to look at that seriously.
I have not heard, nor have I read anything factual so far, other than the testimony I heard from the last panel, and now yours, sir, that is someone trying to lay a predicate that one of the levees was breached by someone other than nature? Is that what's being...
Historically speaking, and it may seem odd that I'm discussing this, but I like history. But I do know that the Corps of Engineers was developed from a flood in Louisiana back in the 1920s when the local authorities saw the Mississippi River raging down to New Orleans, and they blew up the levee in Plaquemine, deliberately flooded Plaquemine to save New Orleans. So and then they took indentured servant slaves, 1930s, to rebuild that levee. Blacks, 1930s, slave labor. They didn't pay them. They put them in camps. They worked to rebuild a levee. They weren't paid. They got them out of prisons. They got them off the streets of New Orleans for vagrancy. 1930s. They built that levee back that they blew up. No. So it doesn't. I'm not a conspiracy freak, but there's a couple things I know. John Kennedy wasn't killed by one person, and one bumbling idiot didn't kill Martin Luther King by himself. My past chairman is a civil engineer, the largest black civil engineering firm in the world. He cannot come up with an explanation for that levee breaking. He predicted the tsunami. He saved clients from Asia much money and their lives, telling them not to build in that tsunami area. He cannot come up with a logical argument or an excuse or a reason for that levee breaking in New Orleans. This is a very credible...
You want to start spouting factually. If you factually believe that that thing was blown up, then you better have some facts to back it up. If you're just going to be spouting those words, then they become reckless words, and therefore they're dangerous words.
I agree.
So your testimony here today is very, very important.
As to the levee question itself, there are two things that we have to look at. We have to look at the various reports of explosions being heard, and we have to look at a crater at the bottom of a levee. We have to look at divers who said they went down, and there is a crater at the bottom of the levee that is explainable, consistent with an explosion having occurred. And so those are two pieces that you can actually go and look at. You can go talk to witnesses who are in the community and see how consistent it is that an explosion occurred, and you can go send investigatory teams down and look at that levee. And then you can look at history. Because who would have believed they purposely gave Native people smallpox? I mean, who would have believed that they purposely gave African people syphilis? I mean, who would have believed that? I mean, there's so many things that's just unbelievable, but yet bear out in history.
All right.
Yeah,
Perhaps we can commission...
If it is important, here's what we want to do. Even after today, we can have some offline discussions, because part of healing here is pretty doggone important.
Yeah.
That's right.
Get into it.
So part of the healing.
I would.
Part of the. Let me just say.
Go ahead.
If we're gonna learn, our charter is pretty limited. We're gonna go back to it here. It's to obtain the facts, pre-landfall and post-landfall, of what exactly happened. Now, within our charter, we can do that. We can find out whether or not there was an actual explosion or not. I guess what I'm taking away from your testimony is that you believe that's something we need to do. Right? Is that what you're telling us? We need to find out.
I think it's something that needs to be done. I kind of think it needs to be done by some independent parties, because I'm a little worried about the truth that's going to come out of certain proceedings. I'm a little worried about that, because it may be an effort to move on and heal, and therefore not deal with things that have occurred.